The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of the AART Podcast.
If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll show you what I mean. If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll bring you to your knees. If you follow me.
I'm Chris Stafford, painter and podcaster. I hope you tuned into the first 2 episodes of the show where my guests were Alexa King and Debbie Mueller. But if you didn't, and this is your first time, I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode, because we'll be featuring some more great guests, some great women artists. And speaking of great guests, I sat down with English artist Lindsay Mullen, who spends her time either in her studio on the island of Menorca or in Washington, D.C. A lifelong artist, Lindsay was born in Hertfordshire and graduated with a BA from West Surrey College of Art and Design. An opportunity in her teens led her to the Spanish island of Menorca, where she worked diligently and in relative isolation to establish herself as an artist. Painting on hemp sacks and surviving on a diet of chicken wings were just some of the sacrifices she made in those early days. And this clearly paid off. And before long, she was exhibiting around the island and enjoying her first commissions. Her career took off, and she's not looked back, as her work has garnered international awards with showings in solo and collective exhibitions around the world. She says, "I focus on creative work that both captures my eye and enters my soul, so that a palpable inspiration has no choice but to emerge and be shared with others." Lindsay's next exhibition is in Canalever in Menorca, entitled Menorca and the Light of the North, from Hartung Bergman, opening on April the 22nd and running through September 24th. I sat down with Lindsay just before she left for Menorca. Lindsay, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Well, you are one of my first guests on the first season of AART, and something I think I told you, I really want to raise the profile of female artists because they've typically been in the shadows or behind the easel. Have you found that in all your years of being a professional artist?
You're going to hate me for saying this, but no. I really think that I've had so many good friends and good artists that I know that are women, and they're mixed in. You know, everybody's together at art school. We start off so early in life together, and I just don't think there's been sort of any discrimination in brackets between the guys and the girls in the art world, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, historically, if you look at, the masters...
Yeah, of course. Historically, that was completely different. I mean, women were pushed towards the background. I mean, nothing. I mean, the male painters were the money makers, and women's job was to stay at home, I guess, and have babies. Lots of them.
And, of course, that has changed, but not as much as I think we'd like to think of it, because if you ask the man in the street or the woman in the street if they could name some female artists...
That is true. I think now, though, I mean, certainly in London, I mean, I know there are so many good English women artists, and I think from probably about 20 years ago, maybe, now women are just, they're coming up, and I think the guys are going to fall behind us.
So let's look back at your beginning then, when it all started for you and who you were inspired by. Were you inspired by any female artists as well as male artists?
I have to say, I suppose I'm a bit of a rare case because being a bit of an introvert and always spending my time in the studio alone, and also having I left England when I was about 18, I think, and went over to Menorca, which was a very dozy, quiet island in the time. And I spent a lot of time there just working alone, away from the mainstream art world. And so influences on me from that side, no, women, men, nobody really. I just worked alone, really, in the fields, in the countryside, in old chicken sheds, anywhere that I could find that accommodated me, and what weren't even canvases at the time. I used to paint on old Hessian sack, go around trying to find potato sacks and things like that, and then prime them up and daub the paint on there, and, I had great fun doing things like that.
I love that story. You told me that the other day. I love that you were able to, improvise.
Art tutors, when I was at college and I started doing things like that, they weren't too impressed with me. They thought I should be using, cotton canvas and linen canvas, but financially that was a bit out of the question, so there we were.
Well, let's look back then at, your early days, as a child, and how you got exposed to art and developed your own style it seems to me, from quite an early age. Were your family at all arty?
My father, not so much. My mother, yeah, she was quite arty. She did a little bit of illustration, went to art school when she was younger, worked as a draftswoman. So I think I probably got it from her side. She was also an avid gardener, and I've always enjoyed gardening, and I always think that gardening and painting and gardening go together very well.
They certainly do, but when you were a small child and in school, what was it that interests you about art then?
I don't know, it's just in my blood, I suppose. I've always painted, I've always been making something. I did ceramics at college, at school, right from primary school upwards. I was always more in the art class than I was in the academic side, you could say.
Was it always colour then? You said as a painter.
When I really started painting, I started with oil paints. And I mean, you get this wonderful box of all these little tubes, and there you are to experiment. And I used to copy old master paintings and things like that. And that's how you learnt in those days. Colours are part of life. Colours are part of painting.
So tell us about your education and where you grew up and the schools that you went to.
I went to just local schools. I come from St Albans, which is in Hertfordshire. Went to the local primary school, just at the bottom of our road, and then just moved up the road some metres and went to the comprehensive school there, where I left actually at quite an early age. I was 16 when I left school, and went straight into art education with 1 year in St Albans, at the foundation year they called it, where you experimented with printing, sculpture, painting, and then you decided which direction you wanted to take. Then I did a 3-year degree course in fine art painting down in Surrey.
There was never any question then what you were going to do from an early age. It sounds as if, you got into your teenage years and it was always going to be art.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't really think I was going to make a living out of it, but when I had the opportunity to move to Menorca, suddenly the window was open and I had that chance to actually live in an old farmhouse over there, and of course I could live for practically nothing. It opened the window, opened the door really to a new world for me. And from then on, I think 1978, 79, I won a couple of prizes on the island, which they gave you what is now nothing, but at the time was a lot of money to me. And you got your gold medal and a certificate and some money, and that kept you alive for the next 3 to 4 months. So you worked hand to mouth a bit on sell a painting and move on. And from moving over to Menorca, there I met a lot of interesting people. There were people arriving on the island that they were interested in art, and I got invited to go to Italy. I spent 3 months on the Lago de Garda, and it was absolutely beautiful, and I was given an apartment and told to paint.
Now I hate you.
And from there I went to Munich. Another invitation where I was painting in Munich in the city after that, and had an exhibition with the British Council there. That was my first biggish exhibition. It was great, and they came back to the island and painted away.
We missed a beat when you jumped from, then you had the opportunity to go to Menorca, but how did that opportunity come about?
I was learning Spanish, English and Spanish. I was doing A-levels in England. And a friend of mine in the class had a farmhouse. He just bought a farmhouse in Menorca. And I think there were about 3 or 4 of us in the class. It was very small. And we all piled in and went over there and spent about a week making out we were speaking Spanish. Of course, in Menorca they speak Menorquin, which is like Catalan, so it made no sense whatsoever. But anyway. And yeah, I arrived in Menorca and that was it. I just loved the place. I mean, it was absolutely incredible place.
Well, that was obviously the door opening to your whole career, right? A lifetime.
Because I then decided that I would try to make a living as a painter. And it's been difficult. It's no easy feat to make your life as a painter. And there were many, many ups and downs, but it's been well worth it. Well worth it.
Would you say you were glad that it was a very low cost of living then at the start of your...
It certainly was.
At what point then, once you were getting yourself established, at what point did you think, actually, I am going to make a living at this?
I suppose I've always been ambitious. I've always thought I could do it, even if it was, there was hurdles in the way. I think I always thought I'd make it through somehow. I could live on a few old chicken's feet and stuff like that for a while and be happy.
You describe yourself as an introvert. You must have had enough self-confidence, because artists don't always have that certainly at the start of a career.
I suppose so. I don't know. I mean, when I was at art school, before going to Menorca, when I was doing my degree course, I got a lot of encouragement. I got a scholarship from the Royal Academy to do landscape painting, which I actually did in Menorca. And I won a couple of prizes when I was at art school as well, from the local businesses that put up prizes. So I always felt that there was that sort of chance that things just might work out. My parents had just left England and gone to the States, actually. They were starting a new life for themselves. I had that opportunity to go, but decided Europe was the place for me at that stage in my life. And, I was on my own, I was independent, and I just felt like I wanted to do it, and I just felt it was going to work. When people tell you that they're in love with your paintings, which some people did, it gives you that boost, makes you feel good. The energy is wonderful.
That kind of, positive affirmation that you are developing a style. And that was interesting what you told me a few days ago about how nowadays, people would see Turner, would see the Impressionists in your work, but that was after, because you had already developed your eye and your style. Yeah.
It's strange because, people would come into my studio and say, oh, you must have been influenced by Turner or Monet or some of these painters. And it wouldn't be that I would say, who's Turner? But I really didn't study the work particularly. I just think it came that way. I think probably living also in a southern climate, the light, the atmosphere, I adore painting the sky, the sea. I think it's very immersive. It gives you a great feeling, and I suppose, Turner must have been in my blood somewhere. My English heritage there.
What would you say was probably the best advice you had then in those early days when you were making a name for yourself?
Yeah. Just keep working. You have to work. It's really hard work. You can't give up. You just got to plod on and keep going. I used to take paintings round to restaurants, bars, anywhere that I could hang them up. Can I decorate your restaurant? And it worked. People saw them. People would be there, heated, spending time looking at the paintings, and, you get contacts that way. It was very simple in those days. I mean, I wasn't in any big galleries or anything like that. That came a bit later.
And then when you got your first big commissions, where did they come from? And what kind of value did your paintings have then at that time compared to what they have now?
I suppose relatively they were always quite expensive. I mean, expensive. They were. How do you put a value on a painting? I don't know. I mean...
How do you?
I have no idea at times. I was surprised when I came to America and they said, you have to value your paintings. It was in some peculiar way, which I still don't understand. It's something to do with square inches. And it just threw me. I thought, what? What is this country about? How could they value paintings by the square inch? I sold a painting maybe when I was at college for, I don't know, let's say £5, and the next painting I would say would be 10, and things work that way. But obviously, if it's a big commission, I mean, you have to work a little bit on, well, there's going to be some time, and you have to go to the house, or wherever it is, the place where it's going to hang, and spend time with the people. And you just work it out. I don't know. I mean, I've just sort of worked it out as I've gone along.
When you were getting a commission like that, especially in the early days, there's the pressure of performing, really, basically. Yeah, you've certainly... Did that bother you?
Yeah, I like to have a goal, yeah. At the moment, I've been working for an exhibition in Menorca, in a museum in Menorca, and the idea that I have that space and I've got this time limit on it always helps. It really spurs you on, because...
You like to be driven in that way?
I like to be driven. I like to know that there's an end date when the paintings have to be hung, I mean, it's just a bit contrary to what we should be doing, I suppose, as artists. Right. Yeah. But, I mean, generally, you normally get about 2 years. Could be longer before an exhibition is on. And you have this work. You could be working on a show for minimum, I would say, 2 years, probably more like 3. The show I'm doing at the moment is collective, and I think there are about 6 artists in it, and it's called The Light from the North, and it's Hoffner and Bergman, Hans Hoffner, through till today, and it's about painters that have come from the north of Europe and moved down to the south. And they did actually tell me that about, I suppose it must have been about 9 months ago, which certainly panicked me. It really panicked me, because I wanted to fill one entire wall with a huge painting. It's about nearly 4 meters long by about 2 meters wide. And I just thought, okay, this is it. And I threw myself into it and worked solidly on that work. And there it is, hanging in Menorca. And I hope when I get there, it's still hanging on my studio wall.
From the time that you got that call until you actually started, how long, shaping the concept and what you were actually going to do, how long did that process take?
I think in the case of this, he had mentioned it about a year ago, the curator to the show had mentioned it about a year prior to this. So I've sort of got a little idea in the back of my head that I wanted to fill this room and make an ambience, an atmosphere of the island, the sea, the winds, the clouds and the countryside within this room. So that we've even got some bird song with Menorcan birds in it. So I knew that I had it in the back of my head. So the minute he said to me, okay, it's on, but you've only got like 9 months, that was it. I was on the job.
Yeah.
But it's a very physical job as well, painting. There's no quiet little painter sitting at his easel. I mean, I've got ladders and boxes and mixing paint, and I think nowadays a lot of painters have assistants to manage this sort of thing, and you stand there and paint. Well, I do all that myself, so it's hard work.
So how many pieces do you have in this next exhibition?
I have 3 huge paintings. They're all sort of 2 or 3 meters. And then I have a number of monoprints, the small ones, and I'm thinking of incorporating one more smaller painting. But when I get to work with the space and the exhibition space itself, the gallery, I'll figure that out.
Let's just go back to Menorca, because you were there how many years before you made the decision to move to Washington, D.C.?
I've been in Washington now, I think it's something like 6 years. It might be 7. But I still split my time between the 2 places. I spent a lot of time in Menorca. And I moved to Menorca, I think it would have been 78, which makes me very old. I bought my first house in 83. Yeah, I think Washington, I think it's about 6 years or 7 years I've been coming here.
How did that come about?
It's love. It's through love. Oh. It's so sweet. Oh. This is a romantic part of the story.
Are you going to tell us?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you decided that it was worth, moving across to the States, but keeping somewhere in Menorca, because you're keeping your house there in Menorca.
I kept my house, yeah. I have a 16th century farmhouse out there, and I also still, until this year, had a number of animals. I kept sheep and ducks and chickens and quite a menagerie. And my last sheep, unfortunately, passed just a few months ago.
Oh, my condolences.
Thank you. She must have been at least 25. I did have 60 sheep when I started.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sheep do have a habit of curling over and dying easily, innit? Let's just go back to that transition, because painting with the light that you had, the environment that you had in Menorca, is very different to Washington, D.C. How did you adapt to continue the style and the style that you had established? What did you find you had to do in terms of adjustment to that kind of dual residency?
Yeah, it was difficult, but when I first came over, I brought a lot of my paintings with me, so a kind of security blanket. Filled my studio with some paintings that I'd done over there in Europe, and I've continued to travel. I've been to Italy, to Venice, and places like that. So I think I sort of draw on those images a lot through the work that I'm doing here in the city. I have done some cityscapes. I have done some work from around here, but it's very much studio work. Obviously, you can't stand outside in DC and paint so easily. And I think, there's been some darker colours incorporated into the work, but it's been a smooth transition, I would say.
What do you enjoy about painting here in the studio?
Now, that's a difficult one. What do I enjoy? I think one of the things I enjoy, which might sound a bit crazy, is the fact that I can shut the door on the studio and I don't have the distraction of the beauty of outside, which is a draw. When I'm in Menorca, I constantly want to walk out into the garden. Here, when I'm in the studio, I stay in the studio. and I work there, so perhaps I concentrate a little harder.
Very different discipline.
Yeah.
And when you're in Menorca then, I mean, where they're permitting you, presumably plein air, are you?
I spend a lot of time in between. I mean, my studio has huge doors on the front of it, so I'm walking in and out, and the life it's split very much between inside, outside, you know, and I've created this beautiful garden outside as well, which I tend to paint, and so I'm working between the two places.
You told me that you also find it hard to describe your work, to talk about your work.
I've always found it extremely difficult to put the feelings that I have for the paintings. I seem to be wired to my arm and a paintbrush and not to my brain at times, which, you know, so the idea of actually putting it into words I find very difficult at times. People ask me, that question that always comes up is, what type of paintings do you do? And that is such a difficult question for me to answer.
How would you define success then as an artist? Because I think every artist thinks of this differently. I'm not going to put any words in your mouth. So what's your definition of having been a successful artist?
My definition? What, am I a successful artist? What does that mean? Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, to have success, I think if you manage to continue painting and you don't give up and you continue painting and you, obviously, if you can support yourself from that, all the better. But it's very difficult today in the art world. And also, I mean, galleries are cutthroat. I mean, it's tough. So success in the commercial side of painting, I think, is very difficult. Success for yourself, to make yourself feel good about what you're producing and not wanting to throw yourself off a balcony somewhere or set fire to your studio. I think if you get that, you know, that good feeling from having, when you finish a painting, or I don't even know if you can finish them because I continually keep painting again and again over paintings. When you get to that point, it just gives you such a lot of energy. You just feel so complete. When you look at a piece of work that you've done and you feel that can give somebody else something, you feel you've actually managed to achieve something positive and a strength, I suppose.
Do you find it hard to put the brush down, metaphorically speaking, on a piece?
Very, very. When I actually rolled up the large painting to just send to Menorca, it was still wet. And had it still been on my studio wall, I would probably still be just touching a little bit here and there. And sometimes paintings that are very old, and I look at them and I think, maybe I should just do a little bit here or a little bit there. It's crazy. You could go on forever.
Do you find you have to discipline yourself then? You know, I could go on forever. I'm just going to have to, wrap this now. Otherwise, it will never get to Menorca.
No. You don't discipline yourself. You just paint.
But how do you put the push down then? If you could keep going, if it's so hard to stop?
You're hungry? It just comes to that point where you know that's it, where you know that's the end. Can't be put into words, I'm afraid.
When you look at what you've achieved so far, Lindsay, so much more to come, but what are you most proud of about your career and of the work that you've created?
I think one of the exhibitions that I did in Menorca made me extremely proud. It was called the Cathedral of Light, and it was held in some beautiful old buildings that used to be the old courthouses, but it's above a market in the centre of town and in massive places, massive hallways. And it gave me the opportunity to hang the work in this magnificent space and it was 25 years of my work. over a span of 25 years, not 25 years of paint, of physical paintings. They wouldn't have fitted in the room. That was a great feeling. It really was. And it was something that I look back upon and I always think, well, that was great, because I think when you're a painter and you can show your work through the years, like retrospective, it's your life. It's like pages of your life that you're hanging on the walls, like a book of your life. And that's really a complete way for people to view your work, rather than just maybe the latest series of paintings. I mean, everybody's painting series these days. And it's nice to be able to say, well, that this was done maybe in the 80s and then the 90s, and people get a real picture of what you're about and how you've evolved, and they can make their own mind up.
Autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
If you're at an opening and maybe you're not recognised, and you can eavesdrop, what kind of things do you like to hear people say about your work?
Well, I don't want them to say that they think it's awful. But what would I like them to say? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean...
Is it the light?
People always talk about the light in my paintings. Always. Yeah. The light, the atmosphere, the ethereal quality of the light in them.
And the atmosphere that creates.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Menorca, as you are about to go back for this exhibition. And you touched on the process there. You had to wrap the canvas up and put them in a tube and ship them out there. Talk about the exhibition itself and the dates for that, and in the process of getting your work there and installing.
Well, I've just I sent it off about a week ago, but the larger canvases, I've rolled the paintings, and I literally put them inside a plastic water pipe. It sounds dreadful, but it protects them very well, and then they're boxed up and go off. If it was smaller work, obviously it would be crated and go. And the paintings have just, they've left. They'll be there, hopefully, when I arrive. I'll be leaving in about a week. And then I'll stretch them up when I get there. They're making stretchers on the island and hang it. The show opens April the 22nd in Can Oliver, in the museum in Menorca, in Mahon, that is the capital of the island. The curator, Carles Marquez, has organised this show. They brought paintings and works from Hans Hartung from Antibes, from the Fondation there, and Bergman as well, Eva Maria Bergman. And so they were on the island in the I believe it was 1930. So they're going to be like the centre of this show, and then they're working from their work through to today. And I believe Hartung actually, he designed a house on the island, which of course doesn't exist anymore, but they're going to make a small mock-up of that as well for the show. But it should be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it very much.
How long is it for?
It's on for 5 months. It's going to run for the whole summer. From Mahon to Cinderella, which is the other end of the island. I mean, it's such a huge place, they have to move it.
So you'll spend some time over there. You'll be painting whilst you're there, and
yeah, and hopefully swimming.
What are you working on specifically now? Do you have another exhibition ahead?
No, not at the moment. I'm just taking a small pause while I actually hang and work on this, and we'll see where it leads me.
Any goals then? Any ambitions that I would like to have an exhibition wherever?
I would love to have an exhibition in New York, but then wouldn't every painter? London, Paris, New York. But no, I think I'll settle for probably a beautiful cathedral somewhere or some gallery space like that. I would like to do that very much.
If you were to look back then at young Lindsay and have to give her some advice on what from where you are now, what kind of advice would you give her for her career? Would you have done anything differently?
I think, if anything, I wish perhaps that I'd had some slightly more formal art education, in as much as when I went to art school in the 70s, they just sort of gave you a studio, threw you in the door and gave you some pots of paint and said get on with it, but didn't actually teach you any of the techniques particularly. It was strange. It was just that time. Many painters say the same thing. And I think I would have loved to have gone to the academy for a master's or something like that. At the time I was too eager to leave the country and get travelling. But I think now, in retrospect, I would have benefited from that, and I would have also enjoyed it. So if anybody wants to offer me a master's in the Royal Academy, I'll be very happy to, potter off there at this later stage of my life.
Well, we will give you contact information, how they can find you.
Thank you very much.
And for aspiring women artists out there who maybe are having formal training, maybe not, what's the best advice for them to, as you say, it's very hard work, they've got to get used to that.
It's such hard work, and I mean, when I was younger, and I was in that space as well in Menorca, there were very few painters, very few artists in that space where I was actually working. So now, I mean, everybody is painting, everybody has online courses. It's so tough to work your way through, but you just got to do it. You just got to work hard. It's just work. Go in the studio and work.
I guess there's not such a thing as a typical day for you. You probably paint as needed.
Typical? No, I don't have a typical day. Yeah. I do. I mean, when I go in that studio, I close the door and...
And woe betide anybody who disturbs you?
Quite.
Can you paint there, since it's all studio work in DC, in artificial light?
It's half and half, obviously. The light's not so great over here at times. But, yeah, I got some good daylight lighting in there, so I can, because I do work into the evening, even in Menorca, under artificial light. I mean, just part of, you can find me in there at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So, Are you a person that can go to bed and then just get, just something in your head and you've got to get up and do it? It hasn't happened in Washington, but it certainly has happened in Menorca.
I can imagine.
Yeah, certainly. Then you wonder the next day what you've done.
Well, I think that's just about wraps up a snapshot of what life is like for Lindsay Mullen these days, and what it was like, and your career. I mean, overall, I'd imagine you have quite a sense of satisfaction in your journey.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with when I look back through my life, I think it has achieved something in the art world, and I've always hoped that the paintings that I have sold and that are hung in people's houses and in institutions and wherever, they'll obviously outlive me, at least I hope they will, and they give people happiness and joy.
Lindsay, finally, we are going to give you your contact information, so how they can find your work online and also how they can follow you on social media.
My webpage is fineartmenorca.com. Social media, Fine Art Menorca, I think. I'm not very social media-ish.
But I do know you're on Instagram.
Well, you will find that out, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. Well,
Lindsay Mullen or Fine Art Menorca.
Okay. All right, well, we'll put a link in the show notes. And I want to thank you very much for taking time to just look back on your career. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you again to Lindsay and to you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share on social media and on your podcast app. If you leave us a review, it makes it easier for others to find us. And you can leave your comments, questions, and suggestions for us on our Instagram page at the AART Podcast. That's the AART, AART Podcast. And you can also join in the conversation there, of course. Or you can reach us via email. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, drop us a line to Hollowell Studios, that's HOLLOWELL studios@gmail.com. I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, thank you for listening.
If you follow me.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.